Hello, welcome to this tutorial series of developing RESTful services with Spring Boot and Mongo DB. I am Balasubramanian. From today's tutorial onwards, we are going to look into some advanced topics. Till today, what we have looked into is first we started looking into how do we insert documents, how do we find documents by ID, how do we filter documents by complex conditions, and using those filters, how can we utilize those filters to go and update the document. We are at this level, so the entire tutorials are saved as playlist. You can go and revisit it. So today we are going to look into some of the advanced topics. uh, the topic that we are going to look into is life cycle events. So what are life cycle events? In certain scenarios, while we persist the data, we might need to do some pre-processing or post-processing before persisting or after fetching the data from Mongo DB. So Spring Boot provides certain event hooks which can be hooked into uh, and we can do certain operations at that point of time. So those are called lifecycle events, and we can utilize those callbacks or the event hooks to perform certain operations. So what are the events that we can utilize? One is on before convert, on before save, on after save, on after convert, on after load. These are the event hooks which we can hook into. Let us look into what is the first event hook which we can hook into. On before convert. On before convert is a event hook. It would get called before the object is converted into a document. A document is a JSON document or a JSON document which would be persistent. And before it is persistent, just before we have a POJO, before the POJO is converted to a JSON document, this method would be called. So on before convert is called on certain operations on insert list and save methods. When we do these methods, this event gets hooked. So where we can use this method? Any transformations at the entity level. For example, there are certain fields and we have to persist or derive certain fields out of the other fields. We can use this. Like for example, if we follow our data model, we have set a field called full name, which is the combination of a first name, middle name, and last name, right? So before we persist the contact, such kind of concatenation thing can be utilized here because it's just going to be computation, right? So that can be done here. The other use case which I can tell is in enterprises, while before we persist, so there are some complaints related things which we have to adhere to. For example, GDPR is a data protection compliance. Personally identifiable data has to be encrypted and persisted. That is that every enterprise has to adhere to GDPR to be compliant about GDPR, right? What they say is a personally identifiable information. For example, a contact number, an email ID should not be visible at the document level, because documents, when we are persisting at plain text, and if somebody is documented the cluster admin, and if they have a read access also, and they can directly go and fetch into the collection and see it, and we want to eliminate such kind of things. So what we can do, we can use the on before convert method to encrypt the information and persist it. So when it is in the POJO, which is in the JVM, it would be in plain text, but once it is converted to MongoDB document and persist, it would be in encrypted format. So that is one good use case in enterprises. So this would be really useful in such scenarios. On before save. On before save. Post converting the entity into a document before persisting the document into DB, this method gets called. Now if we go and do this encryption at the field level, that would not get reflected in the document, because by this time the entity is converted into document. So though any changes in the entity would not get reflected here. So what are the use cases of it, right? So we have this method, and can we have a real use case for it? Yes, sir. For example, if we need to maintain the version of the document, okay, so we can get and that is not exposed to the POJO. You assume like we need to maintain some kind of versioning, some kind of uh, post entity operation which are not related to the entity level objects can go here. We can attach for example, this method is called during insert list and save methods, right? If the document is undergoing a bigger change, we can do a transformation on it, or uh, we can do certain we can do operations which are related to the document level here, not at the entity level. Any changes at the entity level would not get if any changes in the entity, if we are making at this point of time, would not get reflected in the document. So whatever changes that we have to make it in the document level only. So that is the use case for it. People usually use this place to encrypt as well, but I would suggest we do it on before convert, not on before save. Yeah, but this also can be used. What happens is we have to create a custom field for it and then encrypt and save it. For example, if you have to create a certain fields which are very specific to the document, and it would not be deserialized at all, such kind of values can be such kind of transformations can be done here. um, the next method we are going to look at is on after load. Post loading the document from the database, on after load would get called. This method is called on find, find one, and find and remove and get collection methods. When we invoke these kind of method, when we invoke this find one, find and remove and get collection method, this event gets hooked up. So once the document is getting loaded, before it is getting converted to POJO, this method would be called. Any operations that we do at the document level, for example, if we need to remove certain fields from the document and only certain fields is available, must be available to the POJO, we can get rid of those fields at the document in memory. Similar is the case, right? Before save, if there are certain properties which must not be persisted, we can get it removed here as well. So vice versa is can be done here. On after convert. On after, this method gets called post the document is fetched and converted back to a POJO. POJO is plain old Java object. Uh, so this method also would get invoked or hooked up whenever we call find and remove and the get collection methods. So what we can do, so whatever encryption that we have done at the time of persistence, right? We can do the decryption here. So the document will have encrypted data. When on this method we can decrypt and then render it to the downstream consumers, who are the consumers of our POJO object. So the POJO object will have the decrypted data, but the JSON document would have the encrypted data. Yeah. So with this, let us with theory, we will directly jump into the code. So let me minimize this. As usual, I have connected to my local Mongo DB. So Spring Boot provides certain callbacks like this, right? So we have to create a Spring Boot component or a bean, which implements a before convert callback. So when we implement this interface, which is on the contact, which is what we are storing the contact domain object, and the order means it is not in the sort order, in the order of the component which this has to get executed, right? I'm saying this would get executed at the first. So what are we doing on before convert? On before convert, as I told, when the object is there and the POJO is there, and before it is getting converted into a JSON document, this method would get hooked in the life cycle. So I put a breakpoint here. We get the entity and the string collection. Collection is the collection name, right? The collection name where we are going to get persisted. Collection is anonymous to a table, right? If collection equals of contacts, when we are because we might be doing certain operations which are specific to collection, right? So we can ignore other things. For example, there are certain collection which would not have personally identifiable data. We don't need to hook this, because this is a callback which gets hooked, right? Irrespective of whether whatever insert we are doing, we are doing, or save we are doing, this would get hooked. To eliminate this getting called multiple times during the hook, we can add precondition saying that only when the collection is this, please get this hooked, otherwise don't get it hooked. That is what we are trying to do. If in So what am I saying? As I told, I am setting the full name and by hooking up this method. So prior to this, the get full name is not formed. So now I have moved the full name from the constructor, object constructor, to here. So we are converting, we're taking the first name, middle name, last name, and concatenating all three and persisting it. So let's see how this method gets invoked. So I am debugging it. So while I debug, I will go and delete this document. Okay, so I'm going to delete this document, acknowledge. So if you see the last document that we have is Padmavati. Let us see if this is getting hooked. Okay, initializing. Let's reboot application started. Let's go to insomnia. We need to go to the post method, and this is the object that we have. And I think I have the cached value here. No need to worry. Then I am sending this. Okay, we need not worry here. Okay, if you see, this method gets hooked on before convert. The entity has, if we debug it, evaluate this expression, entity full name is empty. You note it down. Full name is empty as of now. So since this collection name is I'm debugging and showing you entity, middle name, last name concatenated, F8, and we are returning the entity. So if by this time when I evaluate this entity again, the full name would be set. The full name is set. So we are able to get access to the entity before it is getting converted into a JSON document, and we do whatever operations we can do here. So I will close this. I will run this. Okay, so let us go whether whatever we have inserted, whether we are able to get that or not. Let us directly go to the DB and verify. Find.pretty, and what is the first name, full name? Okay, we are able to get the full name persisted in the way that we want. So this is the first method that we have to look into, right? So let us go into the second method on before save callback. So before we okay, let's look into what is this. So before save callback gets hooked up post the entity to document conversion, and before persisting it to the database. So by this time the entity is converted into a document, and we will be able to add certain fields which are specific to the document or database. We can do it here. There might be specific use cases that we have to do it in enterprise, but I have added, say, a custom field called encrypted, which is equal to false in this piece of code. But we can do whatever operations we have to do it in the document as of now. Any changes if we have to do in entity would not get reflected here. For example, since it is here, right? Since the collection is okay, let me run and show, and then we will do a negative testing and do it. So I'm going to operate on the same object, so I'm deleting it. Okay, this is another callback. We'll look into that tutorial later. So if you have noted, I am deleting from the server, I get a callback there. We'll look into that in a different tutorial. So I'm doing a fine, and the document that we have inserted is not there. Let us reinsert the document here. send, I'll do F9. Before convert is getting called first in the life cycle. If you note it down, and I have put a breakpoint in the before save as well. Yes, I have put a breakpoint in before save as well. If you see the order of execution is before convert and then before save, and that is what we have been looking into. I press F9, we have the document here. So I press F8 and I am appending something in the document here. On the document contains some field called encrypted equal to false. Now I am returning the entity, right? I am evaluating this expression entity, and full name is there. Edit value. Please, okay. Set full name of empty. So just bring it, evaluate. So it is evaluated, and now if we see the full name should be empty, I'll try to evaluate. But any changes which we are doing at the entity level would not get reflected here. Let us see. Full name is empty. Okay, I am able to set the full name to empty here. Post the document get converted, but when we execute it, the result should be we should be able to see the full name there in the database. That is the intent of this operation. That is the intent of what I am trying to do. You see it here. Full name is here. So before returning the entity, what I did try to set the full name to empty, and I was able to do it at but whatever we are doing there would not get reflected in the document, because by this time the Pojo object has got converted is converted into a JSON document. So anything related to the Pojo object changes that we make would not get reflected here, and that's what it is. So the response might have the full name as blank, but the data is persisted like that. So I think we are good here. So we have looked into two of the entity hook methods, right? And we forgot to verify it. There should be a field called encrypted. Okay, so we are able to successfully add a field called encrypted. So if we have certain specific fields which are related to database, we can hook these events here. Okay. With this, we will look into the other entity methods, right? Okay. So before convert, I am removing the breakpoints here. After. Okay. So we have looked into certain post callbacks, right? For example, we have looked into after load, we have looked into after save, and we have looked into after convert. When the presentation at the start of this tutorial, we said that we will look into it. So Spring Boot provides specific set of interfaces to be hooked into before, but when it comes to after events, we have to extend the abstract Mongo DB event listener, and then override this after load, on after load, on after save, and all these things. And we can also override others, right? On before convert, on before save is also here, but Spring Boot provides a efficient way to do this callback as well, right? So that is why I've used that. So now with this we know how to do these things in two different ways. We can use abstract MongoDB event listener to subscribe to the event hooks, and we can also write before convert callback and before save callback as a separate component. So one before convert and before save are available separate interfaces, but on and on after load, on after save, and on after convert are available only in abstract Mongo. There are no specific interfaces which are available which would help us to hook. So we must use this approach only. So what is that I have done on after load when the document gets loaded? So first of all, let's look into on after save. Whenever a document gets persisted after it is saved, this method gets hooked. So let's look into this first, right? I put a breakpoint here. Before that, I'll go and delete it. Again, it will go and hook here. This is an interesting tutorial. Find out pretty. It is not there. I'm going to send this. Pressing F9. So by this time, the document got persisted. So let's go and see. Yes, if you see, on after save method gets hooked once the document is persisted in the database. So we have this document persisted and we have a breakpoint hit. So once the document is persisted, this method gets called. So why we need to subscribe to this event? For example, once we persist the document, we need to send some notifications, right? For example, if you need to send an event to a Kafka topic or to the downstream system saying that, okay, there is a change which has happened and there is a new document which got inserted, a new item got introduced, a new contact got saved, you might have to start billing and other things. So this is when we can do this event here, right? So usually okay, I'll press F9 and these are the use cases. First of all, I'm trying to explain what are the use cases behind it. In enterprises, whenever a document, for example, if we consider a shopping cart, whenever an item get added to the shopping cart, we need to go and find out whether the item exists or not, something of that sort. Or whenever a price got changed, it has to be published to the downstream systems. So during those cases, we can use this kind of code to send notifications to it. Usually, what we will do, we will persist it, and if the save is successful, and then do it is what we write this if condition, and if it is failing, we will go and do it in else part, the event will not be sent. So the elegant approach is to hook up the event in on and after save. We can have all the if conditions, like if the collection equal to this, only you send this event. For example, only when the contact gets added on that collection we can do it. If it is on a different collection, we don't need to send, and that is the use case of it. I'm not, since I am sorry, this since this tutorial is to focus on Mongo DB, I am not focusing on publishing this event to a downstream system. While we look into Kafka or any event publishing mechanism, we will look into that as well. But that is beyond the scope of this tutorial. So let us look into on after load on after convert. This gets hooked at the time of fetching it, right? So interesting thing is we have a breakpoint already. I'm going to send this. Okay, it's going to call by find by ID when find and find by ID are same. First event hook, which first method which gets hooked up in the event lifecycle is on after load. On after load is where the entire document is there. It is not getting, by this time the document is not converted to an entity. So whatever we have to do, for example, if this document contains other objects which we need to do certain things, we can eliminate those objects and eliminate those fields. Such kind of things can be done. So this would get hooked in the first cycle. The second is after convert. By this time the object got converted into a POJO. So what we can do, if the field is encrypted by this time, we have access to all the encryption algorithms and all these, the decryption algorithm, AES encryption and decryption, symmetric decryption can be done at this point. We can do at the after load or we after convert. It is based on how people want to do. Let's not go into how we have to do it here, but the idea is if we understand the event hook life cycle, we would be in a better position to do what we have to do at this point of time, right? On after load gets called first, and on after convert gets called second. On after load, by that time, if you are going and doing certain kind of entity, so the entity itself is not available, only the JSON document is available. By this time, the JSON document is available and the entity is also available, but whatever changes we are doing in JSON document would not get reflected in the entity, because by this time the document got converted into a POJO object. Yeah, If you see here and it goes back, and we are getting the document. That's what it is. And we have come to the end of this tutorial. So let us revise what we have looked into. This we have looked into the below event hooks. First is before convert, before save, um, af- after save, after convert, and after load and after convert. I think we should change the order. After load and that doesn't matter here, right? So if we looked into this life cycle events of MongoDB. um, yeah. Thanks for listening to this video tutorial series, and hope you will find it useful. And if you find it useful, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for your time. Bye.